Listen to me for a moment. You've spent so much time cheering for others that you forgot the question that shifts everything. Why not you? If growth is happening around you, if doors are opening for others, if progress is possible for them, then why not you? You're standing one decision away from stepping into the version of yourself you've been avoiding. I want you to hear this with clarity today. Some people rise not because they're better, not because they're chosen, but because they finally believe they were allowed to step forward. They stopped shrinking. They stopped apologizing. They stopped waiting for someone to hand them permission. This is your moment to challenge every limit you've accepted. This is your moment to confront the version of you that's settled. You've carried greatness inside you for years, but you've been walking like you're empty. Today we're stepping into Why Not You 2.0. A stronger you, a clearer you, a focused you, a you that refuses to sit on the sidelines of your own life. If possibility exists, then why not you? When you start recognizing your internal worth, everything around you begins to shift. Most people move through life carrying an invisible weight, a quiet belief that they are less capable, less deserving, or somehow behind everyone else. That belief doesn't come from truth. It comes from years of comparison, criticism, and moments when you felt overlooked. But your worth was never something that other people had the authority to measure. It was inside you from the start, long before anyone had an opinion about who you are or what you could become. When you understand your worth, you stop negotiating with doubt. You stop shrinking to fit into places that were never meant for you. You stop waiting for a sign that it's your turn. You begin to step forward with a sense of calm strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout or prove anything. It shows up in the way you carry yourself. It shows up in the decisions you make. It shows up in the standards you set for your life. People often confuse worth with achievement. They think once they reach a certain level, earn a title, or gain recognition, then they will finally feel valuable. But worth is the foundation, not the reward. You build achievement on top of worth, not the other way around. When you treat your worth as something you must earn, you will always feel like you're chasing something that keeps moving further away. But when you recognize it as something you already have, you approach growth with confidence rather than desperation. This shift also changes how you respond to challenges. Instead of seeing obstacles as proof that you're not enough, you start seeing them as experiences that shape you. You understand that pressure is part of the process, not a verdict on your abilities. You stop questioning whether you belong in the room and start focusing on what you bring to it. And that quiet confidence becomes your anchor. Recognizing your worth doesn't mean you think you're perfect. It means you know you're capable. It means you believe that your effort matters. It means you trust that what's inside you is strong enough to carry you into the next season of your life. When you hold that level of belief in yourself, you stop living like you're waiting to be chosen. You start living like someone who knows they were built for more. Breaking the habit of self-doubt starts with understanding how quietly it grows. It rarely shows up as a loud voice telling you that you can't do something. Instead, it's subtle. It lives in the pauses before you take a step. It shows up when you delay starting a goal because you think you need more time, more skill, or more proof that you're ready. It shows up in the way you overthink simple decisions, fearing you'll make the wrong one. Self-doubt becomes a pattern you repeat without even realizing you're doing it. And with every repetition, it steals a little more confidence from you. This pattern often comes from old experiences you never fully questioned. Maybe someone underestimated you. Maybe you faced failure at a moment when you needed a win. Maybe you grew up thinking you had to be perfect before you tried anything new. Over time, those moments turn into a story you tell yourself. The story says you should hold back. The story says you might not be enough. The story says it's safer to stay in familiar places, even if those places limit you. But that story isn't truth. It's a memory pretending to be a rule, and it keeps you from stepping into opportunities that are meant for you. When you begin breaking this habit, you start by interrupting that story. You stop letting every uncertain feeling turn into a final decision. You allow yourself to try without assuming failure. You give yourself permission to grow without demanding perfection on the first attempt. You realize that doubt isn't a signal to stop. It's simply a sign that you're stepping into something unfamiliar, and unfamiliar is where growth happens. As you challenge the habit of self-doubt, your mindset shifts from fear of mistakes to acceptance of the learning process. You begin to see that every confident person you admire also started in uncertainty. They weren't born courageous. They developed it by taking steps they weren't sure about. You understand that courage doesn't show up before the action. It shows up after you move, after you try, after you decide you won't sit quietly in the shadow of fear. Little by little, you reclaim the voice inside you that says you are capable. You stop letting hesitation lead your life. You start trusting your choices, your instincts, and your ability to grow through anything you face. Breaking the habit of self-doubt isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily commitment to stop believing the lies that kept you small. And once you begin that process, your confidence rises in ways that open doors you once thought were locked. Owning your progress means finally giving yourself credit for the steps you've taken instead of only noticing the distance you still have to go. Too often, people overlook the small victories because they're focused on the big picture. They dismiss moments of growth because they think progress has to be loud or dramatic to matter. But real growth usually happens quietly. It happens in small decisions, in disciplined days, in subtle shifts no one else notices. When you learn to appreciate those moments, you start building a stronger foundation for everything you want to achieve. There's a pattern many people fall into where they compare their journey to someone else's highlight moments. They look at someone who is far ahead and assume they're behind. They forget that every person who is successful today was once in a place where nothing looked impressive, nothing was polished, nothing felt certain. Everyone starts with simple steps. No one skips the process. When you own your progress, you stop measuring your worth through other people's timelines and start valuing the pace that works for you. This mindset also protects you from burnout. When you don't acknowledge your progress, you live in a constant state of feeling inadequate. You push yourself harder without ever feeling fulfilled. You accomplish something and immediately move on to the next task without pausing to appreciate what you've done. But when you recognize the work you're putting in, you build confidence that fuels your next move. You stop chasing validation and start finding motivation within yourself. Owning your progress doesn't mean you settle or stop striving for more. It means you notice the seeds you've planted. It means you understand that every improvement, even the small ones, moves you forward. You begin to see how much you've already climbed. Instead of staring at how far the mountain stretches above you, you stop judging yourself for not being perfect and start valuing yourself for being persistent. This shift gives you the strength to stay consistent. It helps you see setbacks as part of the path instead of signs that you should give up. You start recognizing patterns of growth you never paid attention to before. Maybe you communicate better than you used to. Maybe you handle stress with more clarity. Maybe you show up with more discipline than you did a year ago. These things matter. They shape your confidence. They elevate your standard. When you own your progress, you reclaim control over your journey. You stop letting doubt define your pace and start letting your effort speak for itself. You begin to trust that even the smallest forward step is still a step toward the life you're building. Choosing environments that lift you is one of the most powerful decisions you can make for your growth. The spaces you spend your time in shape your mindset more than you realize. You can have talent, discipline, and vision, but if you stay surrounded by people or places that drain your energy, you'll feel stuck even while working hard. Growth doesn't happen in environments that hold you down. It happens in spaces that challenge you, stretch you, and remind you of what you're capable of becoming. Many people stay in limiting environments simply because they're familiar. They hold onto routines, relationships, or atmospheres that feel comfortable, even when those spaces no longer support their goals. Comfort can become a trap. It keeps you repeating old patterns, thinking the same thoughts, and living at the same level. When you choose an environment that lifts you, you choose a setting that encourages you to rise above where you've been. You surround yourself with energy that feeds your progress instead of slowing it down. This doesn't always require drastic changes. Sometimes it's as simple as spending more time with people who bring out clarity instead of confusion, people who motivate you to grow instead of keeping you tied to who you used to be. Sometimes it means creating a workspace that inspires focus instead of distraction. Sometimes it means stepping back from conversations that pull you into negativity and choosing to invest your time in places where optimism and effort are the norm. As you shift into better environments, your confidence begins to strengthen. You start noticing that you think differently when you're not weighed down by old atmospheres. You make better decisions when you're surrounded by people who believe in progress. You feel more capable when you're not constantly defending your dreams. You realize that the energy around you can either lift your vision or shrink it. Choosing these environments also helps you handle challenges with more resilience. When you're surrounded by grounded and growing people, setbacks don't feel like the end. You're reminded that difficulty is something everyone faces, not a sign that you're failing. And that reminder keeps you steady. It keeps you moving. Over time, you'll notice that your environment shapes your identity. When you choose spaces that lift you, you begin acting like the person you're becoming instead of the person you've been. You start to feel stronger, clearer, and more aligned with your purpose. And that shift becomes a turning point in your journey because the right environment doesn't just change how you feel, it changes who you allow yourself to be. Staying consistent when life gets tough is where real transformation takes place. Anyone can stay motivated when everything is smooth, but the moments that define you are the ones when the path is unclear, the results are slow, and the effort feels heavier than usual. Consistency in those seasons isn't about perfection. It's about showing up with whatever strength you have, even if it's less than yesterday. It's about choosing progress over excuses and effort over emotion. When you keep moving during hard times, you build a version of yourself that pressure can't break. Most people lose momentum not because they lack potential, but because difficulty convinces them to pause long enough for doubt to take over. Hard days create the illusion that you're not getting anywhere, even when you are. Challenges make you question your direction, your timing, and your ability. But consistency isn't built on how you feel in the moment. It's built on the conviction that your effort still matters, even when the results aren't visible yet. You become stronger every time you stay committed in a moment where it would be easier to step back. Consistency also teaches you discipline, and discipline becomes a shield that protects your progress. When you stay steady through tough seasons, you stop relying on motivation. You start relying on your habits. You stop waiting for inspiration. You start trusting your routine. This shift keeps you grounded when everything around you feels uncertain. It keeps you focused when distractions try to pull you in different directions. Consistency becomes the anchor that holds your goals in place. The powerful thing about consistency is that it compounds. Small efforts done regularly create large outcomes over time. What feels insignificant today becomes meaningful in the long run. A little progress on a hard day still moves you forward. And when you look back, you'll realize that the days you felt the weakest were the days you actually grew the most. Pressure didn't break you, it built you. When you remain consistent, you also begin to trust yourself more deeply. You prove to yourself that you don't quit when life gets heavy. You prove that you're reliable, that you're capable, that you're committed to the person you're becoming. That trust becomes fuel. It becomes confidence. It becomes momentum. Staying consistent in hard times isn't easy, but it turns you into someone who doesn't crumble under pressure. Someone who can carry responsibility. Someone who moves forward even when the road isn't clear. And that strength becomes one of your greatest advantages as you grow into the next version of yourself. Rebuilding your identity starts with recognizing that you don't have to stay attached to the version of yourself shaped by old habits, old fears, or old environments. Many people live their lives repeating patterns that no longer match who they want to be. They carry behaviors from a past season into a future they're trying to grow into. They act from old wounds, old expectations, and old limits. But identity isn't something you're stuck with. It's something you can reshape through intention, awareness, and steady effort. This shift begins when you stop defining yourself by what you used to struggle with. Maybe you lacked discipline in the past. Maybe you reacted out of insecurity. Maybe you settled because you didn't believe you had other options. Those moments were part of your journey, but they don't have the authority to decide who you're allowed to become. Rebuilding your identity means choosing the traits you want to carry forward instead of accepting the ones you picked up by default. As you step into this new identity, you start making decisions that align with the person you're becoming, not the person you were. You set boundaries because the new you values peace. You show up with consistency because the new you understands responsibility. You treat yourself with more respect because the new you knows your worth. These decisions might feel unfamiliar at first, but that's part of the process. You're rewiring patterns. You're training your mind to respond differently. Every time you choose the future version of yourself over the past one, you reinforce your new identity. This transformation also requires honesty. You have to look at yourself without excuses. You have to confront the habits that keep you small. You have to acknowledge the ways you avoided growth in the past. That honesty is uncomfortable, but it gives you clarity. It shows you what needs to change. It helps you take ownership of your evolution instead of waiting for life to force you into it. As your identity shifts, so does the way you carry yourself. You speak with more confidence. You walk with more direction. You think with more clarity. People around you may notice the change before you do. They'll see a different level of focus, a different level of discipline, a different level of intention. That's what happens when you stop living from old patterns and start living from a renewed sense of purpose. Rebuilding your identity isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about becoming who you were capable of being all along. It's about rising above the version of you that's settled and stepping into the version that's ready for more. When you embrace that shift, you start living from strength instead of survival. You start moving with purpose instead of hesitation. And your life begins to reflect the person you're choosing to become every single day.